Welcome to 21st Sports recap and reaction for the Buffalo Bills at the Jacksonville Jaguars in their Week 7 matchup played October 25th, 2015. We're going to go over all the scores and the stats, give our breakdown and analysis. And this one was played across the pond over in jolly old England, in London to be exact, as the Bills were at the Jaguars, although this wasn't really a home game as they were quite a ways away from northern Florida. But to start things off in this game, Dan Carpenter put the first points on the scoreboard about midway through the first quarter, a 31-yard field goal that made it 3-0 Buffalo over Jacksonville. So that was the score after one quarter of play, as this game started off as a low-scoring defensive battle in the first, but things broke wide open in the second quarter as we saw 37 total points scored in the second quarter between these two teams. But starting off less than a minute into the second quarter, Blake Bortles hits Allen Robinson for a 10-yard touchdown. Myers adds the extra point, and now the Jags were in the lead by 4 with the score 7-3 Jacksonville over Buffalo. Then about a minute and a half later, with about 12 and a half minutes left before halftime, Chris Clemons scoops up the fumble by E.J. Manuel as he lost the ball as he was being sacked, and Clemons gets a 6-yard fumble recovery for a touchdown as the defense put another 7 on the board to make it 14 for Jacksonville with the extra point by Myers. And then just 7 seconds later, the defense scores again as Telvin Smith intercepts E.J. Manuel and runs it back 26 yards for the pick six. Myers hits the extra point. It's now 21-3. So Jacksonville just going off here in the second quarter, but they weren't done yet, as less than 4 minutes later, with about 8.5 minutes left before halftime, T.J. Yeldon ripped a 28-yard run for a touchdown. He made some nice moves. Myers missed the extra point, and so it would be 27-3 with the Jags up by 24 points. But the scoring wasn't done for the quarter, as the Bills would strike back about 6 minutes later with less than 3 minutes left before halftime. E.J. Manuel, despite having led up 2 defensive touchdowns, one on the fumble and then one on the pick six, he bounces back by hitting Robert Woods for a 16-yard touchdown. Carpenter added the extra point, and it was now 27-10 as the Bills cut the Jags' lead to 17. Dan Carpenter would hit a field goal with just seconds left before halftime, a 38-yarder, and it was 27-13. As Buffalo had a chance to get a touchdown, but they had to settle for a field goal, and it was now a 14-point game heading into the locker rooms at halftime. So 27-13, after having led up 27 straight points to Jacksonville in the second quarter, Buffalo bounces back by putting up 10 points before halftime. Neither team would score in the third quarter, as it was scoreless, but then in the fourth quarter, in the opening seconds of the fourth quarter, Dan Carpenter hit a 26-yard field goal. Again, Buffalo not being able to get it into the end zone. So they got all the way down there, but they would have to settle for the field goal. And so now it's an 11-point game with the score 27-16. Then with about 6.5 minutes left to play in this game, E.J. Manuel aired one out. He'd been sacked on the previous play, but he bounces right back with a 58-yard touchdown pass to Marcus Easley. Easley's first touchdown pass of his career, his first touchdown reception, rather. And then they went for 2, and it actually ended up being a flag on the first attempt as they had failed an incomplete pass, but there was a pass interference call, so they got a second chance at it. They gave it to Shady, and LaShawn McCoy got it in for the 2 points, and it was now a 3-point game with the score 27-24. Then about a minute later, Buffalo gets a pick six of their own. Earlier, Jacksonville had a pick six, but here, Blake Bortles gets picked off by Corey Graham, and he makes some incredible moves and gets into the end zone with a 44-yard interception return, a pick six, and with the extra point by Carpenter, it was now 31-27 as Buffalo took the lead by 4 as they had scored 28 straight points after having been down by 24 points back in the second quarter. So an incredible comeback here for Buffalo. But then, just when it looked like Jacksonville was going to lose this game, Blake Bortles, coming off the pick six, leads the Jaguars 84 yards in 7 plays in about 3 minutes and ends up capping that off with an incredible touchdown pass to Allen Hurns, who made quite the catch as he ended up landing like right on his elbow and his shoulder right there in the corner of the beginning of the end zone, sliding in there, somehow staying in bounds. It was a 31-yard touchdown, and with the extra point by Myers, it was now 34-31 as the Jaguars were back in the lead by 3 with a little over 2 minutes left to play in this wild game. And so now Buffalo would get the ball back. They needed a field goal to send this one into overtime. With over 2 minutes left on the clock, they had the 2-minute warning on their side, and they had their timeouts as well. And they would march down the field and get up around midfield, but they were forced with a 4th and 2 with less than a minute left, having already used 2 of their timeouts, and an incomplete pass that was broken up by Colvin as he came in, got a hand on it, broke up the pass to Woods, and that would turn the ball over on downs as the Buffalo Bills now would end up falling short of the comeback, as all that was left to do was for Blake Bortles to take 3 knees in the victory formation, and the Jacksonville Jaguars somehow win this one, even though they had it well under control in the first half, but they let it fall out of their hands in the fourth. But then the comeback touchdown from behind by Blake Bortles, an incredible game. It was a crazy game. It was like 2 different games almost. As you saw, the defense of Jacksonville was playing exceptionally well in the first half. Not just the defensive touchdowns, but the way they were getting after E.J. Manuel. They were getting in his face. But then Jacksonville just kind of fell asleep at the wheel, and they allowed Buffalo to claw their way back into this one as they kept just chipping away. And then they ended up scoring all those points in the fourth quarter. They put up 18 points in the fourth. But then after having relinquished the lead, Blake Bortles shows a lot of poise to lead the Jaguars back down the field and then hit Allen Hurns with that touchdown pass. What an incredible game, and what a big victory for Jacksonville. Now 2-5 on the season. Buffalo falls to 3-4, but a big win for the Jags, as they had trouble playing with leads. They had trouble closing out games in the fourth quarter, but this right here is something that they can definitely build upon for the future. Having, even though this game, it was well in hand at one point, and then they let it slip out of their hands, and then to come back and secure the victory definitely shows a lot of poise on their part. And in this game, Blake Bortles, not really big numbers, 13 for 29, 182 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. E.J. Manuel, who was really struggling early, he actually put up a decent amount of numbers, 24 for 42 with 298 yards, 2 touchdowns with 2 interceptions. Of course, 2 of his turnovers led to points, touchdowns each, as the fumble and then that pick 6 as well. And then also the other interception led to a touchdown. So it was like 21 points off of turnovers in about 5 minutes there in the second quarter. He really hurt the offense with his mistakes. And speaking of mistakes, they made a lot of penalties in crucial situations as Buffalo was shooting themselves in the foot all game long. But let's look at the stats on the ground. T.J. Yeldon had a heck of a day, although he did most of it early on in the game. But he had 20 carries for 115 yards and a touchdown. I actually was wondering why they weren't using him more in the second half, especially when they were playing with the lead. It seemed like they started to get away from the run. But they ended up pulling this one out anyway. McCoy, 18 carries for 68 yards. And he also had 2 receptions for 36 yards as well. So he had 104 total yards in the game. E.J. Manuel also had 8 carries for 38 yards. For the receivers, Allen Robinson, 6 receptions for 98 yards and a touchdown. Allen Hurns, 2 receptions for 53 yards and a touchdown. And for Buffalo, Robert Woods, 9 receptions for 84 yards and a touchdown. And Marcus Easley, 1 reception, but it was that 58-yard touchdown and the first touchdown of his career. Hogan with 6 receptions for 56 yards. Then we look at the kickers. Dan Carpenter, 3 for 3 on the field goals, 2 for 2 on the extra points as he was perfect. Myers did not attempt any field goals. He was 4 for 5 on the extra points as they are not a sure thing anymore as they've been moved back, as we all are very familiar with at this point. Smith had an interception for Jacksonville. So did Pazluzny. And then for Buffalo, Graham had an interception. He had that pick 6. And Smith's was a pick 6 as well. And Graham and Smith each have 8 tackles respectively for their teams. Smith, of course, for Jacksonville, Graham for Buffalo. And for Jacksonville, Colvin had a sack and a forced fumble. And also Branch had a sack as well. Alualu had a sack and Jones had a sack. And a Branch also forced the fumble. As Branch was definitely getting in the backfield and giving E.J. Manuel some problems. So was Clemens as well, who ended up returning that fumble for the touchdown. Williams had a sack for Buffalo. Both Williams, Mario, and Dan. And then we look at the team stats. 26 first downs for the Bills. 17 first downs for Jacksonville. On third downs, the Jaguars 5 for 14, 35% converted. 3 for 12 for Buffalo, 25% conversion rate on third downs. Both teams went for it once on fourth down and neither converted. We look at total net yards, 375 for Buffalo, 295 for Jacksonville. On the ground, 120 net yards for the Jags, 115 for the Bills. Through the air, 260 netted for Buffalo. Manuel sacked 4 times for a loss of 38 yards. 175 netted for Jacksonville. Bortles sacked twice for a loss of 7 yards total. And we look at the penalties. Each team had 10 penalties. Buffalo was penalized 87 yards, 66 yards penalized for Jacksonville. Buffalo fumbled the ball 4 times. They only lost 2 of them. Jacksonville fumbled once but did not lose the ball. Well, not in the fumble, rather. They did have a couple interceptions, but in the red zone, both teams were struggling. Each team only had 1 red zone touchdown, as the Bills were 1 for 3, just 33%, and Jacksonville 1 for 2, 50%. Time of possession, 31 minutes and 22 seconds for Buffalo, 28 minutes, 38 seconds for Jacksonville. As I said, in this game, early on, Jacksonville scored all those points in the second quarter. It looked like they were just going to run away with this game, as their defense was really getting in the backfield, terrorizing E.J. Manuel. They were doing an excellent job on defense. But as I said earlier, they kind of fell asleep at the wheel, and it's tough to play with a lead sometimes. You can kind of get into that, lackadaisical sense where you're just like, yeah, we're winning. Let's just get out of here. Let's just waste the clock. In Jacksonville, when, early on, they were looking good and they were running the ball good, but then once they got the big lead, all of a sudden they stopped running the ball for some reason, and they weren't having the success running the ball anyway at that point, But the thing is, you got to just keep running the ball, whether you're picking up yards or not. And Yeldon actually was having a really good game, especially in the first half, but they didn't really run him much in the second half. And Buffalo, they just kept going at it. And E.J. Manuel was just forced to have to keep going because, with Taylor not dressed and Johnson, they had just picked him up. He's the 4th team that he's been on this year, and he definitely doesn't know the playbook, so he was not really in any shape to come in. Otherwise, they would have took Manuel out the game. But you got to give him credit that he was able to lead them to some points and actually get them the lead. Of course, Corey Graham with that pick 6 is what put him in the lead, but he did have a couple of touchdown passes, one there near the end of the first half, and then another one about midway through the fourth, that big pass to Easley, and I thought that showed a lot of poise too, because he had just got sacked, and then he comes back on the very next play and throws a 58-yard touchdown. So, I mean, not that he's going to really be going anywhere, but still give him credit for, fighting in the game. But Jacksonville, like I said, I just was kind of wondering why was their coaches calling the plays they were calling, in the second half, especially, in the third quarter, and then into the fourth, letting Buffalo get back in it. They weren't going for the jugular. Like, they needed to put more points on the board instead of just kind of like, I don't know, being really conservative at that point, but also not really sticking with what was working, as they were having success on the ground, but then they got away from it. But give Blake Bortles credit, as even after the pick six, he comes back on the next drive, and he showed just as much poise, if not more poise, than E.J. Manuel, as E.J. Manuel didn't give up. Well, neither did Blake Bortles, as he led him on that game-winning drive there in the fourth quarter after they'd been winning all game, and after they really hadn't done much in that second half. For him to come back at that point with about 5 minutes left in the game, and then to have him score right before the 2-minute warning to go ahead, that was really clutch by Blake Bortles, and an amazing catch by Allen Hurns, as Robinson and Hurns are, of course, excellent targets. Julius Thomas had a nice catch earlier in the game too, but it really comes down to Hurns and Robinson. Of course, Blake Bortles. Buffalo banged up. They didn't have, their quarterback. They had injuries at receiver, also injuries on that defense as well. Interesting too, Jacksonville, they just flew into London 48 hours before the game. Buffalo had been there all week long. They flew there last Sunday after their game. They went straight to London. They didn't, bother sticking around in the U.S. They went over there. They had their days off there, actually. And then you wonder, well, it turned it into kind of a vacation for the team. And they seemed like they kind of went on vacation early on in that second quarter. Of course, they did get it into gear, and they did make things interesting. In a game that actually, I was kind of like tempted to wow, geez, do you have to, this one's kind of in hand, but kept watching and was rewarded for it, that's for sure. Although it was interesting too, with the game being on the Yahoo live stream. I'm interested for anyone who watched the game on Yahoo, what was your experience? I actually had it on my Xbox and I had it on my laptop on both, and it was kind of interesting because one would be ahead and the other one would jump ahead, and then the feed kept jumping in the game, a play would just disappear or something, what happened? The feed just jumped, and then at times it would go from high quality to really low quality to okay quality to low quality, then to high quality, then back to low quality. And I'd much rather watch the game on the NFL Network personally than watch it on the stream, which really wasn't that good. It was okay, like I said, I did get to see the game, but with the quality of the feed not really that good, and then with the fact that it kept jumping around and trying to catch up to itself, it kept lagging back, maybe that's just my service, but I've got the top internet service that you can get, so it shouldn't have been an issue. Of course, the internet in the States is pretty crappy anyway. But let me know what you think in the comments section below. Definitely interested to read your thoughts and opinions. Thank you very much for listening. It's greatly appreciated. I hope you're having a good day and have a great weekend and enjoy all the sports.